Well, I could start. We were talking about we meet every 4 or 5 weeks, have a meeting about what we're going to do, and it just came up that this would be a great idea. I was doing the Heroes song when I was playing solo with and with Ray and Brad, and then Brad had his song. So I don't know, it kind of just naturally, organically developed there. And then we thought, well, why don't we see if we get other people to do it, but not, but organically, but not sounding like David Bowie. To sound like it, but original, different.
See, you guys
So
should have told us that because we were the most unoriginal version.
you guys were great. I know.
We were trying to sound like Bowie, But that's what I dug about it was everybody had their own interpretations of his tunes
And
and
we made a list of bands that we all liked. And then we reached out to people, and some people got back to us and some people didn't. And we were just leaving it very wide open for everybody. And then I know Andy, you met Brad and Dennis through uh,
Abby Mars.
Abby, yes. So
Yes, right. Isn't that something?
on board, And Jack, how did we end up with Slip Away? I don't
Hmm.
even remember. Did you pick Slip Away?
I picked Slip Away. I forget whether we were at Crossroads or something, but it was like, hey, do you want to be on a Bowie tribute? And I'm like,
Yes.
I guess, sure, why not? I'm of all of you, I would say I'm the by far the least musically talented, So, but you said, hey, do whatever you want, and I was delighted.
I thought your
It
track
really worked.
is amazing. It really is.
And unfortunately timely too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, right.
Right.
No, that well, I guess I'm talking now.
Yeah, go. That's great.
For me, I've loved Bowie more, more and more and more, and as you dig deeper and deeper, you appreciate, his genius more and more. Um, and then started, digging into the later albums, which not all of them are amazing, but there's always bits of genius. Um, but that song's "Slip Away" as being a Jersey guy and an Uncle Floyd fan. That that blew me away the first time I heard it. I'm like, how does he know about Oogie and Bones Boy? The thin white Duke from England knows about a very specific Jersey kind of stuff. And then many years ago, I got to interview Uncle Floyd
Hmm.
Vivino. He kind of he didn't brush it off, but he's like, yeah, he was a fan, and that was kind of cool that he was a fan and he came to our shows. Um, so for 20 plus years, that song's been kind of maybe rattling around in the back of my head, and you give me an opportunity to be in a Bowie thing, that's what came out.
They slip away. Don't forget to keep your head warm. Twinkle, twinkle, Uncle Floyd.
It's fantastic. Great job there. Very unique.
It could not have been, without young James Bally playing on like a haunting, beautiful piano on that. I thought really made it.
Hmm.
Is he Ray? I've been meaning to ask. Is he related to you, Bally?
Distant
Okay.
cousin. Yeah. No, I was here. We recorded it here at my studio, and the third take, Jack nailed it in the third take. And
Hmm.
the funny part was, I don't know if you remember, Jack, but you started to play it. James started to play it, and he's like, "Wait, play me the song." So he put his head down like inches from the piano, played the song, on iTunes, and then he said, "All right, play it again." He played it halfway through. He goes, "All right, stop," and then he recorded it. And I said,
Yeah.
Hmm.
"Oh, that's pretty amazing." He didn't know the song before the session. I don't think he listened to it before the session. He
Well,
loved, he's a big Bowie fan. I'll speak for James. I took him to the Bowie film that came out a few years ago. A really beautiful sort of film, that documentary, I guess it is, but it's kind of like an essay film trying to mirror Bowie's sort of own creative impulses. And he was blown away by it. And ever since then, he got more and more into Bowie. Dennis, what about Heroes? Talk about that.
Well, I'm not really a guitarist. I play guitar in my own way, and for some reason, when I started practicing, this song just started developing and happening. And I always loved that Bowie record. I mean, that song has such conviction. It's recorded in, West Berlin at the time when the wall was up. You have Robert Fripp there on guitar, and I was in Germany once, in West Berlin when the wall was up, so I could feel that emotion. So it just happened naturally, the song. So,
And
and I tried to
supposedly,
play Ebo on Fripp's part just to be, different.
yeah, that's nice when that Evo kicks in.
Dennis, when the Evo kicks in, I got a chill down my spine. And I feel like with the Ebo part, you don't actually play the Fripp sort of melody line that's so iconic in the song, but you capture the vibe in your own way. And I think that is so hard to do.
I can remember.
I mean, Heroes is a great song. I love Heroes, but I've heard it enough.
Mm,
I don't need to hear it again. And when I hear your version, I'm like, that's incredible. How an
thank
artist
you.
like
That's different.
you and Brad, you're always doing that. And people like Willie Nelson, they'll take a song you've heard a million times and then play it, and you're like, oh my God, I love that. And I've heard it a million times. I don't need to hear it again. And yet you do something really different with it and really, unto yourself.
Well,
And
that's what I feel like everybody did on this record. Everybody's own impression came out.
crashing in the same car. I mean, come on, that is so radical. I got to hear about
yeah.
that.
Wow.
Hey everybody, this is Andy Waldron of Sailor Boyfriend. I am Sailor Boyfriend. Sailor Boyfriend is me. Um, and yeah, this was like a challenge. He was my first real obsession, like
Mm.
in middle school. Like my growing up in like South Jersey, my dad would drive us to the Museum of Television Radio, now the Paley Center, and
Right.
we would pull up the Dick Cavett show and that famous like very spooky Bowie interview. And in the years since then, he's really been a guiding star. I don't think anyone who listens to Sailor Boyfriend doesn't get that vibe. But that was a challenge with like picking a song and of course serendipitously uh meeting Brad and Dennis at our fellow out of this world performer Abby from Mars. But yeah, this was tough. I had this sort of idea to essentially mash up the Bowie song, Always Crashing the Same Car, with a Yo La Tengo song called The Last Days of Disco. And what I did was I basically did make like a mashup arrangement of it. Um, I used to do like back in the MP3 blog days, like which was for me in high school. Like I did a lot of those because Rock Band also came out, and you can like take the stem. Like people would download the Rock Band audio information because it was all separate from drums, bass, vocals, and then you would download it and then try to figure out like what works, what doesn't. And so it was nice to return to that part of my life, especially because, like I distinctly remember when Where Are We Now got put out, and like I literally ran from my lunchroom to my music teacher Bill Grillo's like music lab because I can go on the internet and listen to it. So it was nice to get all this like all this stuff, all this music making that I did when I first started making music by myself, and even through the people who played on this, who were Charles Tyler, who's a roommate of mine in Jersey City and is an amazing, accomplished drummer, multi-genre, very amazing. You'll hear, I mean, you heard
Mm.
the brushwork on that was so good. He just listened to like the loop, the Yola Tango song like 2 times, and then recorded that with my fun direction and attempt at oblique strategy kind of curveballs. And then Tyler Lee Jones, who also studied at Stevens at under the music and tech program. And I knew they were a very accomplished bassist. And initially, I wanted them to do the whole guitar solo on the bass. Um, and what I got from them was like this amazing interpretation of the of vamping the verses and the chorus. And I wasn't done like writing out the guitar solo like in not only in bass but also in like 6/8 because it's like as opposed to always crashing. So I ended up playing piano, and that's what you hear on the record. That's just like me. I've been listening to the solo a bunch of times to start notating it, but then I just had fun playing along with Charles's drums, and then I like souped it up a little bit. And that's the piano solo. And I figured it was, an echo of a facsimile of a copy of a copy of a Mike Garson kind of deal. So that was a lot of fun. And add in bells from a church that's near the supposed parking lot that Bowie like almost got into an accident that inspired the song. I got that from the Internet Archive. Um, and then I also sampled Moss Garden because I heard in some of like the loop material of the Yo La Tengo song like this kind of like ringing, and I was like, ooh, what if I just bring in a little bit more of that? And uh and some fun with the OP1 to get like a little bit more like of the original synth sounds, like the spooky kind of
Mm.
stuff in low. And yeah, I'm yeah, and it came together just so nicely. I'm really proud of it. It's been uh, and again, endless thanks to Brad for putting up with my like emails, being like, "I'm sorry, I'm still working on it, still working on it." But it was just it was such a labor of love, and like all y'all are saying, everyone put together such a strange and faithful and weird takes on the songs, and it was nice to be a second to last song. On albums, that's usually kind of like a weird kind of like to the last song. So I was like, yes. Jasmine, I saw you peeping. As I pushed my foot down to the floor.
Did you have trouble since you are a Bowie fan and really did you have trouble picking out the song you wanted to do or how did that happen?
Um, I think I just thought of the arrangement idea. I've been mulling in the back of my head for like, a few months, even before I was asked to do this. And because I mean, I don't we were talking about like Bowie covers earlier, like I didn't want to find myself in the spectrum between like Scott Walker impression and Dan Behar Destroyer impression, which I feel like a lot of when people cover Bowie, they kind of go for that. "Ooh." And
Yeah.
I didn't want to do too iconic of a song, but I also don't want to do I mean, it's an album cut, but it's off of like probably his I would argue his most influential album, I think. Um, and so I went with that. It seemed the most it seemed like it's kind of his emo song.
Mm.
It's a very sad song, and um it felt like a song. It it felt like a very personal song, and he wasn't always obviously personal with his songwriting. He would shroud it in a metaphor, or he would do it a throwaway reference, but he like he said on his last album, he can't give everything away. But when it did connect, when you did figure out a connection to his life, it made it even the more powerful. And Low is a very personal. It feels like his most autobiographical record at
Mm.
times because it was just him raw feeling, when in Berlin. So I felt that that was a little bit more not safer, but more of an opportunity to go a little bit fun and radical with than some arrangements that are famous, like
Right.
Heroes has the EBow, and you still incorporated that, or even like um or like event tied drums, where it's like or or other famous like sounds of producers or instrumentalists that he collaborated with. It felt like good territory to mess up a bit.
Hmm.
So
You
that's
know,
what I heard.
you said could be his most influential album, and I saw you, Fernando, shaking your head, and
Mm.
we all kind of feel that. But I mean, I was 19, I think, or what year? What come out in 79?
77 or
77.
76.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was 17, and I remember. I don't think people really took to it the way it's built a reputation over all these years. I don't think it was, maybe it was well received critically, but I don't think it sold a lot of records. And I think people thought it was a little kind of like a little strange detour. I don't know, Fernando, if you feel that way, but and it's interesting now for you to say it's, maybe his most influential album. I agree. I
Mm.
agree,
Now, I
but
mean, it's because of Brian Eno, I think, more than anything, because it's funny because I have a love-hate thing about Bowie. He took music that was really great and sort of absorbed it and then gave it his own spin. Like you mentioned Scott Walker, Bowie wouldn't be Bowie without Scott Walker, and he wouldn't be Bowie without Mark Bolan, and he wouldn't be Bowie without Iggy, and he wouldn't be Bowie without Lou Reed. He wouldn't be any of it without all those guys. But he kind of like, I'm a huge Lou Reed fan. That's my main staple. If I had to say it. But I feel like he owes a lot to all those people, but I give him credit because he really knew how to take it to another level in production, and he was very smart about how he worked with these really great musicians, and that's what allowed him to reach the level and influence that he had, I think, with people, which is, I think, the hardest thing as a musician is knowing your limitations, and when you can work with people that are really talented, it makes a world of difference,
hmm.
and I think maybe maybe now because we're in this post modern world, and Low is so contemporary, the production, the sounds that are in it are very much about now, you know, better than now, I would say, because a lot of contemporary music is, I'm a little cynical about it all, but yeah, but it's a great album. I mean, but there's so many great albums, right?
Mm.
And it's funny when we picked our song, we first delved into Low. That was the stuff that we started kicking that around. We figured out a few of those songs, and then we were like, eh. And then we tried to do Yasasin, it's a
Yeah.
lodger.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that was a tough song actually, Yasasen. And then eventually we went to station because I remember when I was a kid. Yeah, I'm more Ray's generation, right? And when I first heard Station to Station, it blew my mind. You know, it's
Hmm.
just I was like, wow, this is. And there was no marijuana involved. There was nothing. You know, it was just like this is a kid with a clear head listening to this music, and I found it to be so amazing. And I always thought it was a live recording,
Hmm.
you know, the
Oh,
way that it starts. But it's pretty amazing for somebody to put out a song that's that long, and uh, and of course we had to make it longer.
You can always put out a single edit or a radio edit, you know.
There you go,
That's
Jack.
what I
No,
said. That was my
yeah.
response. Right.
maybe not 9 minutes instead of 12 or so.
That's exactly right. We were gonna fade it at 9 minutes.
Well, it's like the well, that's like a funny thing too, because I mean that was his longest song until Blackstar, I believe, right? And then even then, the song Blackstar, if I'm not mistaken, was originally 11 minutes long, but to make it a single on iTunes, it had to be 9:59 or under 10. So they
Wow.
made it. So I think Bowie, Visconti, and the mixing engineer who worked on a lot of really great contemporary records, I think made it that that shortened edit
Hmm.
just to appease sort of a single format kind of deal. And because I think he thought at the time like an album version, a single version, sometimes it's confusing. But I
And
don't know, yours shreds. Like it needs the space. Sometimes things need the space. Sometimes you need the space to go from station to a station. So I don't know. I love it.
Funny because we just our last single we did is about it's almost 15 minutes long.
wow.
Hmm.
So I was just trying to see how obnoxious we could be by keeping a song just going and going. It was sort of following the do you guys know the song Youth of America by the Wipers? It's it's
Don't
an
know.
amazing tune, but it just keeps going and going with all these weird sounds, you know, and so yeah, that's definitely like had an influence on how we did our version. You know, it's just something that just kept going and going. And originally we had other guitars in it that were really nutty, but they just never wound up in the mix. You know, so it was mostly Mark's guitars on that.
I don't even understand how you kind of created it.
Hmm.
I
Yeah, you
just
know, it was
know.
really upside down the way we did this one because normally we try to do live takes of stuff, but we kept screwing it up, you know, and because it's that whole transition where it goes into
That's yeah, the
Once there were
once there were
mountains.
mountains, right?
yes.
All of a sudden the count, like instead of being like four, it's a five. So there's this skip, and I don't know. And our bass player was insistent. No, we got to get that part. You know, he was like, and I'm like, no, let's just make it four, and we can zoom through it instead. So we kept messing it up, and I thought it was maybe something that happened in the studio when they did the song because back then, you know, you would splice the tape and make that little cut and put it together. And I thought maybe it was like that kind of an accident that maybe when they recorded it, you know, I didn't, and but Aaron insisted that it was something that he did on purpose. So
Hmm.
then, so we finally, what happened was that Mark started the song by himself. He he worked off a click track, but the tempo was really much faster than the original. I don't know if you picked up on that, but it's a lot because the original version is it's much more moody and slow than ours was. So that made it very difficult vocally. You know, it was hard enough just trying to nail the way he, you know, I was trying to do it like Bowie would have done it, right? I was trying to be Bowie, and because I've always been into double tracking my voice, anyways, because I can't find the right place for me to sing, and I write in a lot of different keys, so it's tricky. So yeah, so it started completely upside down with just Mark laying the guitar first, and then we had Aaron lay his bass after that, and then we tried to do the piano, and so it was just very not normal the way that we did it, and we added the drums at the end, like we
Oh,
brought in Jojo.
wow.
Jojo listened
Mm.
to and actually, and it was funny because he did it in one take, Jojo, and because I was supposed to rehearse with Sal with 178 product, and we were eating into the time, and Sal walks in, he's like, "What are you guys doing here?" You know, like we were. So we were like, I'm like, "All right, Jojo, we got only one try here," and he just kind of went for it, and you know, but it's I can't even explain how. And then we redid the bass because Aaron felt like his bass wasn't jiving with Jojo's drumming anymore, so it
Hmm.
was, and then I added the intro at the very end, the piano part, and I decided we were gonna try to do that flanger thing at the beginning, but I was like, let's just make some noise with we used a Moog synthesizer, you know, like an old school Moog. So it
Hmm.
was really pasted together, so it was different from the way we normally record,
Hmm.
Mm.
you know, and working with a click track, which we normally don't do, you know. Although Jojo's really into that kind of thing, you know, he likes to have that reference in case you need to fix anything later, you know.
Hmm.
But we did it all in our practice space, you know, that studio that Ray's done some songs over there.
Great studio.
Yeah, it's pretty primitive. We call it guerrilla style, you know. It's like so. Brad, I dug your version of.
Thank you.
So rock and
Um,
roll. It's got that 70s vibe to it. It's really
well,
good.
that one is actually about 10 years old, the recording, because I did it like the week after Bowie passed. I was, like really affected by it, and just as my own personal kind of tribute to him, I was just playing his songs just on guitar and recording them and just for fun. And so that one I liked the way it came out. And yeah, it is different. Like the original has a funk kind of style to it, mixed with rock guitars, and mine's kind of like I don't know, like garage rocky in a way.
Yes, there's always some change in the weather. This time I know we could get it together. If I did casually mention tonight, that would be crazy tonight. Say,
Talk about Chingaling.
Yeah, let's hear about
And
that.
Chingling, Jackie Puppet were, an out there kind of band. So I knew we had to do something a little bit out of the ordinary. And so on that, it's Acorn Slim is on guitar, Saxy Joe Braverman, he's on flute, and it's Jonah Garrett singing the Chingaling part. And all four of us recorded vocals the whole way through. Well, Dennis, because you recorded
Yeah.
it. But we each took turns doing the whole vocal all the way through, and then we mixed, all of our voices in there at the end. And Jonah does the Chingaling part, and I could hear in my head, like before we even did it, I knew she would be right for that part, and she kind of, knocks it out of the park with that. And yeah, it's really, I think, a great band performance. I'm glad that we all got together and did that. Um, there's a cool kind of Slim starts off with this cool guitar twang thing that was kind of spontaneous. Saxy's flute playing is amazing, and that's the Chingling. It was the funniest part was when they asked what song we were going to do because I had the idea to do the song, and then I said, "Wait, what song are we going to do for the album?" And like, "Wait till you hear this,"
Hmm.
And they
But
said,
it happened so
"Honestly,
fast. I mean, everything was done in one take.
yeah, it was
So it must have
pretty
taken
quick."
2 hours. That's it.
That was yeah, it was we just were
It's
there for
great.
that day, and
We had fun.
yeah.
Well, Too bad Martin couldn't make it too, because she ended the record with this soulful ending, Rock and Roll Suicide. It just was a great way to end the record too. So I thought,
Oh no, you're not alone. You're watching yourself, but you're too unfair. You got your head all tangled up. But if I could only make you care, you're not alone.
And it starts off with the way she comes in, and it goes into this dramatic ending. It's
Who did the Famation? The
Josh
yeah,
Paul.
that
oh,
was
Josh
Josh
Pollock.
Pollock.
Yeah, I met Josh through a podcast I did. And the funny thing about Josh is we did the interview. I didn't even know I was a musician. That's the funniest thing. So I sent him an email, thanks for doing it. And I said, he goes, wow, you're a musician? And so we became friends.
Yeah.
And from there, he played with David Allen and he does theater and he's a real creative guy. If you check out the interview I did with him, and he said, sure, I'll do it. And, he plays this wild guitar and it kind of fits in with the rest of the songs because it's really electric.
Yeah.
that's a, I mean, yeah, those were two very good tunes put together.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
like
it's a
how
good idea.
minimalist it was too. I mean, there was a lot of space in it, but
Fame makes a man take things over. Fame lets him loose, hard to swallow. Fame puts you there when things are hollow. Fame.
but that and Stay, I think, were my faves. It's like not to give it all away, but I dug those. Yeah, they have like this. They have that '70s kind of feel, like you mentioned, Dennis.
Yes. Ray, talk about your son's contribution.
You mean
Ray,
Hat and Hair?
yes.
I don't really know anything about it. My other son plays bass in a bunch of bands down in Baltimore, Hat and Hair. And I've seen them play. They do like country and covers and things like that. And I really like his voice. I think his name is Tim. Really has a voice that fits that sort of country rock vibe.
We passed upon the stairs, spoken wasn't when, although I wasn't there. He said I was his friend, which came as a surprise. I spoke into his eyes.
I wanted to say a couple things. Andy, I loved your comment about Low being a very personal record. I hadn't, it's so true. And maybe I kind of knew that, but didn't really articulate it. And all of a sudden, when you said it, I started, Be My Wife and Crashing in the Same Car, Breaking Glass in Your Room Again, you know,
Sound and Vision.
of course, Sound and Vision. It was so radically different. And honestly, I always liked Bowie, but when I was in high school, all the kids were like Bowie freaks and they cut their hair like Bowie. And when he played keyboards for the Idiot tour, which Low and the Idiot were made really at the same time, and they influenced each other, or like the Idiot influenced Low. Um, all my friends got tickets to see Bowie playing keyboards on the tour, and they were all disappointed that it was like Iggy and not Bowie kind of I don't know what they expected. Maybe they thought Bowie would come out and center stage or something, and they were all kind of bummed about it. Although I did have one friend that played the Idiot a lot. So when I heard, I love Rebel Rebel and all that other stuff, but when I heard Low, and it was right at the time when I was listening to new wave and punk rock and stuff like that, and it fit right in. And I actually, Brad and I talk about this a lot. Old guard, new wave. I want to write a essay
Yes.
where you've got Iggy and
Mm.
Bowie, Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Roxy Music, all making records in the late 70s, early 80s that I think are responding to the movement, whether it's the Ramones or you know, Public Image or Gang of Four, they're all trying to stay relevant. And I think, all of them, when I think of these records, The Idiot at Low, Hard Rain from Dylan, Manifesto from Roxy Music, I think they were all trying to let the youngsters know, hey, we still got game, and
Mm.
and then those records influenced the new wavers. Everybody heard, like you said, everybody hears low, and they're like, I've never heard a drum sound like that,
Mm.
or the synth sounds are so weird, and so it's a very for me like kind of an endlessly fascinating period from some really great musicians, and you know,
I think that's the great thing about music in general, like Bowie could influence somebody who in turn influences him, and then it just goes on and on.
And I used to see him, there'd be like the Village Voice would say like, "Oh, this band is the hottest new band." And I went to Haraz a lot, which was like a punk disco. And I was standing next to a guy who looked like a college professor. He had on like a blazer and like a plain shirt. And I look over and it's Bowie, and I'm standing right next to him. And he looks so nondescript. He just,
Mm.
I don't know, his features were, and then he looked, I think maybe I stared at him too much or something. He kind of walked away. But, he was always going to shows,
Mm.
seeing all those bands at CBGB's and Taraz and Dance. People would all talk about that, or I've read that he would had go to a city and get cassettes of all the bands that were happening in the city and play them. And to your point, Fernando, always sort of consuming and kind of researching for ideas. And, he talks about that in his work all the time. So, he's really kind of a remarkable musician. I want to ask you guys, what did you guys, when you saw Blackstar on the album? I mean, I couldn't, when Brad said, I saw a band last night do Blackstar, I'm like, what? I said, you have to
Yeah.
call them. You
Yeah.
got to get them on this. I was just blown away by the audacity of doing it, and I
Mm.
wondered what you guys all thought of that.
I was surprised they actually agreed to do it. I mean, we kept going. We can't do this record. See if they could get Blackstar on. I kept asking Brad since Brad knew him, and I think it
Yeah,
really fit. And they did a great job.
yeah, that's Magic Forest. There, I know them from Slim from Jackie Puppet. We went and we saw them. I don't know if we were on the same show as them, but yeah, I think we were. And they did Black Star that night, and I couldn't believe they were doing that song. I was like, wow, and they did it great, and
And they're a three-piece band, right? They're
yeah.
In the villa of Orman, in the villa of Orman, stands a solitary candle.
It's awesome that the album spans from the, shingling from the earliest to the absolute latest. I mean, that's a cool aspect.
I think, Jack, I counted, I think seven or eight albums. We covered about
Wow.
7 albums between the 10 songs. So I think that's pretty amazing.
I
But
I
you're
would
right,
I would say
it's-
maybe not right away, but I think this was such a positive experience, it seems, for all the musicians, and that people seem to appreciate it, that maybe a volume two at some point with, I mean, Abby's been mentioned a lot of times. I feel
yeah,
like, she could be on there. Sal could work something up, would be
That was
amazing.
cool. Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
Well,
we have a lot of musical friends who I think would
it's true.
Yeah.
Brad, if we do another one, like Jack says, you got to do Moon Age Daydream. I
oh
have
yeah.
a video of Brad doing that live, and it's just unbelievable.
I was
Really,
Oh,
thinking of
well,
you
my
too.
my girl Karen Cool also does a knockout version of that.
really.
I'm a big fan of Karen Cool, dude. I remember Sex Pod. Uh,
Yeah, baby.
I love doing like these compilations. Like I've been lucky to be either asked or to have the time to submit and participate in them. And it's like both like it's just like a place for play. And I think like especially when it's revolving around an artist as like playful as Bowie,
Mm,
it really kind of like it they're nice puzzles, these arrangements, these songs.
mm.
And it's always fun to hear how people like put those pieces together. I know there's a couple other Bowie compilations I like. There's one called Modern Love that's mostly black artists, like or R&B or soul artists, and that one's great. That was recent. I think like Lorraine is on it, and Alvarado Negro, and um Stanza, and then you have the Life Aquatic soundtrack, and that's like a
Oh, right. Oh,
so and then
Yeah,
there was
terrific.
there was one like the mid aughts of like all those cool last gasp Williamsburg bands like Chairlift was on like I think it's like We're All Turned On. And then yeah, it's just always so fun to hear how people interpret the songs that you've listened to so many times. Like and it really just speaks like what Brad was saying to his catalog that um everyone can have an entry point in his
yeah.
work. Like if you're like more of if you're a Nina Simone fan, I mean, he loved Bowie, famously friends with Nina Simone and gave her flowers in the Wild as the Wind cover. Or if you're like, a strange electronic music, I mean, he loved craft. Like that's the craft work, that's station to station. And then even contemporary, like even if you're like an indie sleaze person, I
Mm.
mean, you listen to the TV on the radio song they worked on together. Province, which is like actually one of my favorite songs ever. It's just it's a really heartening thing. So
He brought in my high school pal James Murphy on the
yeah,
final recording. I mean, that's
talk about a reflector of a
Isn't that
reflector.
something? James
right,
Murphy.
right, right.
That's pretty
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, it's and yeah, and to note that like you can have so many different entry points across style, but also genre, identity, sexuality, like international, like heritage, like that's just like the such a wonderful part about what his catalog has to offer. And yeah, I mean that's why I feel like I've been able, like all of us have been able to stay and remain fans of him for all this time because like you read like one small fact about a song you didn't know before and then it's like a whole bibliography. I mean, that's why I love I don't know if you guys read Chris O'Leary on Bowie, but he's written essays for every song of his, and
Wow.
two of his books are behind me right there.
Huh.
But I really love his series of it because each of the songs is an essay and it reference and he takes the time to connect a whole bunch of different dots, right? Like their book, like kind of like what you were saying, Ray. Like he was voracious in reading in music, new and old. He would go to clubs, he would go to shows. He, it's just there's a level of like wide-ranging intentionality and referentiality that and context that that not I'm not as cynical maybe as Fernando about contemporary music, but I know our music economy right now is can be so one-way street, so singular, so context collapse that it's so refreshing to work on this, like to, work on a song by an artist who really pointed to so many different forms and said like you can connect all these different places and And you know, in the best of Bowie songs, give like his influences or contemporaries flowers, and you know, at some of the lowest points, you learn what cultural appropriation is. So, so I say that not to be like a downer, but just to show that like he really showed how you can synthesize different works and different styles and cultures, and and how it can be an entry point, how it can be an encyclopedia within its own, and good and bad and crass and beautiful, and it's why I love him so much. Yeah.
I do, I agree with you, Ray. Like the more I hear him, the more I do love him. You know, like you can't help it. You know, it's just really great music, and it gets better and better the more you hear it. Although I must admit I haven't really listened to very much of his music past Scary Monsters. To me, Scary Monsters was the last great Bowie album, and Let's Dance and all that stuff like just really turned me off. You know, it was and then I didn't really care for the Tin Machine. You know, it just not my not my cup of tea. You know, and
Well,
so I didn't really
uh,
follow him into those later years. You know,
you
which
could
I guess
talk
I
to,
should.
we could ask Brad about the late period, because you
Mm.
said, Brad, that the late period is as good or better than anything he ever did. And before you answer, James, my son, called me up one night and said, Blackstar is the greatest album ever made.
Wow.
And he's
Mm.
listening to it over and over and over. So, but you've always been a champion of the late work, and I don't really know it very well.
Mm.
So I'd
Well,
love to hear your take on what what you think of all of it.
well, because that's kind of where I came in to, his music was in the mid 90s. That's still one of my favorites of
Which
his,
one?
maybe like top five.
Which one?
Outside,
Outside. Yeah.
Yes, I
Outside,
like that one also.
Side
and
rips.
Great
yeah,
stuff on that.
Earthling that came out after that is a great album also. It's kind of has electronic influence to it. Um, and Black Star, I think that's one of his best albums also.
I
And
did speak with David Torn and Martha Mook, who played on David's records, and David would always give everybody, just do what you feel on these songs, because he picked the right people,
yeah,
so he had that feeling that this was going to work.
that was one of
Just
his talents. Yeah, picking the right
he knew how to pick the
people.
right players for the right songs and record he was working on. That was
Yeah,
another genius of David.
And even right up till the end too. I mean,
yeah.
I know we mentioned James Murphy. He was on that. He was at like for a second tap to help produce Black Star, but I think
Right.
yeah.
Wow, something.
But he does have bleeps and bloops um
Mhm.
throughout the a few songs on that. I will say those latter records do like I feel like Reality is one of the albums I listen to the most because it is kind of, you know, it's just a good rockin' album. He made it kind of, I mean, like Earthling, they were kind of like tour records in a sense, because it's like I have this great live band. I want to make a record with them, like really quick, um and yeah, those, you know, you can, yeah, those have so many gems on them too. It I don't know. I can literally talk about him for days.
Mhm.
I'll go with James Bally. I would say Black Star the next day, and I'll tell you because for me, I kept going back to Bowie albums where these were like I wasn't buying the 90s ones as they were coming out. I would buy a used copy when I would find one, but definitely the next day Black Star I bought as soon as they came out and experienced them as albums, and wow, they both really work as album where you could sit in the dark and listen to them.
Hmm.
Um so yes, I'll always have those memories of experiencing the very latest late stuff as knowing they were special, knowing that wow, it's been a while since he put something out. Um, Experiencing it, fresh. So
I think Station to Station is my favorite Bowie album. Although, the first song we wanted to cover, actually, now that I think about it, was Panic in Detroit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
Yeah, that was, because that's one of the greatest um, first lines ever in a song, right? He looked a lot like Che Guevara, you know. And wait, that's not Diamond Dogs. What is it?
Aladdin Sane, yeah.
Aladdin Sane. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't think of which album that was off of. That's Aladdin Sane. I mean, it's really hard to say, man. They're all so great, right? It's like, but because yeah, I could go, and Low always comes to mind. Yeah, Low is and Scary Monsters is a beautiful record too,
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
that was in the prime of like new wave and all that. All it's when rock and roll died, in that era. Like the '80s was a horrible time period for music, from as far as I'm concerned. But but it wasn't, because that's a music that's resurfacing now. That's so influential. Is the post punk rock thing, you know. So
Low, and then I I love Station to Station. I love Scary Monsters. And I just remembered when you asked the question, I used to listen to pinups a lot.
Yeah.
I thought
Hmm.
pinups
yeah,
were really cool. I love pinups. I love that record. So those are the ones for me.
I feel like Pinups is like the only Bowie album you can put on at a party and not be worried about skipping anything. Like, but I think, goodness, my uh, these days it's either Aladdin Sane or Young Americans, I think. I think like when I when I first got into him, Diamond Dogs and Young Americans were my favorites. I think Diamond Dogs because
that's a great record.
it scared me.
Hmm.
Like it was so like it's kind of like listening to like the end of Day in the Life by the Beatles for the first time. Be like, I'm turning the CD off. This is for me. I'm turning the CD off. It's scary. And starting an album where it's like,
Yeah.
and then, but yeah, Diamond Dogs I really love because it's just like so melodramatic and spooky, but riffy. I mean, from his vocal run on Sweet Thing to like the kind of starting of like an R&B thing on We Are the Dead. And then I love Young Americans is the album I probably listen to the most. I probably have had like a week long like love sesh of each song on the album minus Cross the Universe. That's just it's a fine cover. It's fine. It's just fine. I get why he did it. I get
Hmm.
he was in a weird. I mean, anyway, but I don't know. I love Young Americans is just so it's funny to read like post that year recollections of it from him because it's like in some interviews he kind of treats it like a like as like a like Let's Dance. It's like a pop record more so than maybe his other records, but I don't know. Win has always been like my family's favorite Bowie song. It's beautiful. It's just such a gorgeous song. And then in terms of favorite Bowie song, I mean, besides Win, I like wrote down 10 around his birthday. And I think the one that I can still confidently say either like Driving Saturday or Strangers When We Meet, I think.
Um,
Driving Saturday is just such a, again, it's a, it collapses so many things. It's like a doo-wop song. It's a sci-fi song. It's like the last good Roxy Music song, some would say. But it's just so fun and weird. And then Strangers When We Meet, especially the outside version, it's just some of his most beautiful singing. I mean, God, it's an art rock song, but it's about a failing relationship, but with the bagged with the bags under his eyes of vocal delivery that only he in the mid 90s could have pulled off. And Mike Garson is there too. Or Bring Me Disco King on Reality, which is one of my favorite Bowie songs. It's so beautiful. Those are the songs I think I love the most. The ones that kind of do echo the thesis I gave, where it's like it points to so many different things, but yet still fits on its own volition. But not the Across the Universe cover.
I love Scary Monsters. I
Yeah.
mean, that just blew me away. I mean, the energy on that record, Fripp's playing, and I love Space Oddity. I mean, when I first heard that, I was blown away. I mean, when those strings come in, it's just, I haven't heard it in a long time, and I heard it on vinyl again a few years back, and it just, wow, I could come up with a song like that. So beautiful. And even Let's Dance. I mean, at that period in that early 80s, you would have never thought Bowie would have ventured into that world. But he did successfully. But I would have to put maybe Ashes to Ashes, and I would put Space Oddity up there for me as my two favorite Bowie songs. They're all great.
And the first song on Scary Monsters is amazing. That changed my life when I heard it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I found like my brother and I used to go to this library, and we were in love with the librarian because she used to order the most amazing vinyl. And when we took that home, and it starts out with that Japanese woman talking, it's just like, and also the line "to be insulted by these fascists" is so degrading, right? It's like it's so now. It's we
And to do that only like what 3 or 4 years after like Thin White Duke is
Mhm.
also I was really lucky to see the Lazarus musical
Oh
Mm.
wait, on
and
Fourth Street, like the
at the New York Theater Workshop, the New York I forget what it's called,
was
but
it in the, not in
yeah.
the East Village, right? That was that
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
right? Because I
Mm.
remember 'cause that was there when he passed away, right? That was like 'cause I remember, yeah, because I had a friend that lives right across the street from there. We were always like, wow, I wonder if Bowie's in there, man. It's like oh wow.
Yeah. And I bring it up. Yeah, it's just it's just such a weird play. And I have a rip of it. I have a they like filmed it and I think they filmed the London production, so I may or may not have a video copy. But I bring it up because It's No Game is on like one of the songs in that.
Mm.
And it was so it's just like he what a choice. I like you. It's jarring. It's so cool and oh my God, it was so wild to hear that done live, even in a theater production. It's just such a weird, what an opening to an album. You're so right, Fernando.
Mm.
I want to say my favorite is Scary Monsters. I think that's like um, the best example of him doing what he did best, which to me was the balance that he could find between, experimental music and something accessible, something melodic. And so I think like Ashes to Ashes, the song itself is like Ziggy Stardust, I think is great from start to finish. And anything from like The Man Who Sold the World through Aladdin Sane, that period that was the first things that I really liked his glam period especially. But then, I mean, he's got so many different things that he's done. And then there's albums that later on I appreciate more than I did maybe the first time I heard them. Like Diamond Dogs, I got into more later than I did when I first heard it. That and larger, I appreciated more as time went by. But I would say Scary Monsters and Outside is another favorite.
And we got to bring up, Brad, your artwork on this is
Oh,
fantastic.
yeah.
Really good.
Thanks. Yeah, that's based on the Ashes to Ashes video when he's in the Puro outfit and he's sinking into the water.
But as you know, a theme that has come up repeatedly in this session, you took an iconic image, but you did something new with it. You know,
Exactly. You're right, Jack.
That says a lot for the whole record. I mean, everybody's contribution.
And don't forget
Just
Al Jones.
edit all my cynical.
Oh yeah, mention Al Jones.
Al Jones, who mastered everything except Josh's songs.
and just something that's been in my head during the whole time was that with any creativity, I think most important for you, you know, the creative person to be happy with it, and then for other people to enjoy it, and then there's maybe a third level that we're not reaching for of, you know, fame and fortune, you know.
What's that?
But I don't know anything about it, but you know, Jim Testa, I had someone had joked something, you know, about, you know, Jack, you should do an album, and I said, actually, I have a song coming out in the new year, and he said that send me a copy. So as soon as it came on Bandcamp, I sent him the link, and I was knocked out by the review he wrote that he really when I first sent it, he's like, I don't know any of the people on here, and I said, you do. I said, you know Dennis, you know Andy, and he's like, oh, okay. I thought he wrote a very you know, it was positive, but it was very thoughtful
Yes.
review that is like he got it, you know. And then it was very heartening to. Well, I fell asleep so I didn't hear my own song on WFMU, but to hear Sailor Boyfriend blasting out of my speaker, I was like, you know,
Cool.
they really brought tears to my eyes, you know, and
Awesome.
that was just somebody else who I didn't say, hey, can you please play, you know, just somebody who listened to it and said, this is great, I want to play it, you know.
Yeah, it's a beautiful everything on the album. Couple friends of mine bought the album and both said very, very good, really interesting choices. Everybody's really I think this album we should keep promoting it and not stop. I think it's really good. It's really, really good.
So let's you know, let's keep sharing
Yes.
the record, and you know, there's a lot of
There's always going to be Bowie fans, so people are going to find it. I mean, I always say that with all the music out there, but people search into Bowie and they're going to find it. I feel that.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this has been great. Thank you for coming on and spending the time here. And we all appreciated me, Ray and Brad, who have been working hard to keep this going here. And on our website, we have all on YouTube, all different things. So we're having fun. All right, guys.
Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
again. Everybody, a great
all
night.
right.
And
I
Thanks,
love all you
everybody.
guys.
thank you.
I really
Great
do.
job with the
Yeah.
record. And thanks for doing this.
Of course. Thanks for having.
All right. Take
Bye.
care now, guys. See ya.
Night.